Hey friends, welcome back to Creating Success in the Mess. We're your hosts, Corey and Whitney.
In this show, we help creative entrepreneurs find success in business by living into their highest potential and calling in life. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the infamous problem that we all as small business owners face and have throughout our journey of feeling like we need the perfect time, more information, more, rather than doing whatever it is that we feel inspired and passionate about at that moment, or, called to do at that moment. We always feel like we kind of need to, drag it out a little bit rather than just going with it and seeing what happens.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty bad at this.
Yeah.
I get a thing and I'm kind of like, all right, let me overeducate myself. Let me gain all knowledge. I need 110 facts. I need to watch X number of videos because I'm sure as heck not going to have, here's the problem, the confidence to go forward in this thing if I don't have enough knowledge. I think it's almost like, well, I got to get this degree. I need 4 years of schooling before I can get a real job, right? And it's like, but why do we need that in our business? Like, nothing is requiring a certificate or anything like that. It's your business. Like, you do it however you want. So why do we feel this way?
I think, honestly, it all ties back to fear. I think that we're afraid to just try something because what if it doesn't turn out great? What if, it doesn't turn out to be what we wanted it to be from the get-go? But honestly, when Apple was making a computer or a phone, they didn't hit the goal the first time around. They had to do some modifications. But we see the end product of everything, and so then we try to tie that into what we're doing. What we don't see is all of the attempts and all of the failures and all of the efforts and all of the trials that went into it first. So we try to implement this, what we see from the perfect side, into our business rather than actually doing the process that all of these successful companies and products had prior to being the success that it was. And I feel like that creates the thought inside of us of, I need to do it right the first time, which is pretty much impossible.
Right. No room for failure.
Right. We're afraid of failure. And, time is precious as a small business owner. We have our personal life and we have our business life, and there's only so much time on the clock and in the day. And so we need to do something that's actually going to work because we don't actually have time for failure. But really, failure is what we need to make time for because that's what's going to make the success.
Right. So, okay. I look at this way. So, why is it the fear of failure or just the fear of doing something new? Why is it that we compensate that insecurity with more educating and more information? Is it this idea that if I get all the facts straight, if I get all the ideas, then I can do it right the first time and then I don't have to face failure? Because oftentimes I feel like when I overeducate, all I do is overwhelm. And when I'm overwhelmed, I'm less likely to actually do anything from that point even more.
Right. And by the time you get all of your education done or to a point where you think enough, how passionate are you about doing or making whatever it is by the time you get around to actually doing and making it?
Oh, no, it's just draining. At that point, you're kind of like, yeah, you know what? I'm not passionate. Let's just find something else to do.
Yeah, so then you hop to something else.
Yeah.
And then you didn't ever actually get anything done, and you do the same process in that thing that you did in the previous thing. And then you end up at the end of the day with nothing done, no progress moving forward, and no different. And then you're totally discouraged and you're totally burned out and you feel like the failure that you set out not to be.
Right.
But instead of doing that, maybe if we had just started implementing something or taking steps instead of being afraid of being a failure, in the end, we would have ended up with something. Whether it was something that didn't turn out the way we thought it would, or something that turned out to be, the iPhone.
Right, because I guess technically there's always a win when it comes to failure. So when I kind of look at this, I'm thinking, okay, we all need small wins in the beginning. Small wins help us build up. Well, what if the failure in doing something at the beginning is your small win? Because oftentimes, like, if you build something and you've never built it before, you're not going to get it all right. But then in the accidental, mistakes that you make, you figure out how to fine tune something.
Right. So for me, like, as a creative, it's easy for me to, like, jump around to all kinds of ideas. And I do have all these ideas and these things. So I can start painting on a canvas, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the middle of it, I can decide, well, this isn't exactly turning out the way that I want it. Or, I mean, it's not uncommon that I start painting a canvas and then I come back to it the next day and I don't feel anything for what it was the day before. Mm-hmm. And I think that's okay. But as a creative and as an artist, we feel like it's not okay. But what we learned from painting on that canvas the day before in our attempt towards creating something that we felt at that time gave us something that we're going to use to finish the canvas or to make it whatever it actually ends up being. But we can stop and we can look at it as like, oh my gosh, I wasted my entire day yesterday painting this. I don't even know what I was painting. It doesn't even look like anything. I don't even feel inspired by it. Or you can, like, shift your perspective and look at it as, that blending right there looks really good. Like, those two colors I use, I really like that. Like, the emotional output that I had painting that canvas was exactly what I needed.
Right, it's like getting inspiration essentially within doing the process of creativity, the process of making something, or just, building up something in your business or that thing that you're making or creating.
Right, and the perspective that you take and how you think about it is what determines the future of what's coming. So back in the beginning, when we're trying to overeducate ourselves and find the perfect time and, before we make any action at all, that's the mindset and the perspective that we're going into it with, which is determining the future of what's going to come out of it, mm-hmm. which we just decided was not very much.
I feel like the transformation that someone has to take from what we just essentially discussed was that you do have to educate, right? Like, you do have to learn new things, and there is a part, like, you do have to educate, but it's taking actionable steps. So it's almost like, okay, I've educated at this point, I need an action step. I need to create, like, a win.
Right.
From what I've taken, rather than just, like, what I've done in the past, go through the whole darn course, go through all 4 modules, and then not enact anything. And the last thing I remember is Module 4, and I didn't implement anything from Module 1.
Right.
And at that point, I've essentially wasted my money buying this course, and now I'm overwhelmed, and now I'm feeling doubt because, I paid for this, and now I can't implement anything because I went through it, and I need to go through the whole thing again. I didn't even get it the first time.
I don't even remember what I was going to do with it when I signed up.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you lose, like, whole intention, all just in the fact of, like, not taking action, which I think you said it earlier well. I think it's fear. Mm-hmm. So why is it? Like, why does fear? Because, I think, like, a child, like toddlers, man, they just do whatever. Like, there's no stopping them.
No.
There's, like, no fear factor. Why is it us, as adults, as entrepreneurs, why do we let fear just come in and just steal every bit of our joy and our breakthrough in our business? Why do we allow that from time to time?
And, we don't even have to. We don't have to allow that. Like, I think if more of us adopted that toddler scenario and we ran our business and like a toddler, right? Mm-hmm. Like, just kind of doing it, and if we fall down, then, we're going to get back up. We might have a bump, we might have a bruise, or, but they always get back up and they always go. And if it's anything like my son, they're going to do the same thing again, like just a little bit different. And I think that that's like a valuable lesson that we could all implement into our businesses, is like being a toddler, right? So like when we're doing something, or we're taking a course, or we're trying something new, or we're creating something new, or we're marketing or advertising or whatever it is we're doing, like instead of sitting around and waiting for it to all be perfect, and instead of sitting around and waiting that we have all the information in the right time, we essentially just need to start creating and taking steps in the messy part. In the mess of learning, we need to be implementing, right? Like create the success right in the middle of the mess.
So you said like we need to think like a toddler, and essentially when you learn something new, are you not a baby?
Right.
When it's completely new knowledge, like you're a baby and then you become a toddler. So there's like the baby stages of just absorbing some information, but then toddlers take what they've, they're up and going. Like once they're done crawling, once they're up on feet, like they get going, and that's the action steps. And so I think we have, I think maybe a lot of times it's like permission. It's like, hey, hire one. Like, do I have permission in this to fail? And I think oftentimes I don't think we think about that. We don't think about the permission to fail, to learn from it and build from that. We think of, well, what if I stumble? What if I fail? Like, it's embarrassing.
Right. Are you going to die from it?
Absolutely not.
No. Are you going to get up and go again?
Well, it depends. If we're talking about parachuting,
well,
and I'm trying a new method of a parachute, if I don't have a backup parachute, well, that's just not very wise.
Yeah, that's not probably going to work out well. But for most parts of our business, I think we can crawl, and then we can stand and walk, and we can crawl again, and then we can stand and walk, and we can crawl again.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen anyone say like, "Why is your baby? Like, what's your baby ain't crawling right?"
Right.
It's like, "Oh, look, your baby's crawling. Yeah. Oh, isn't that cute?"
Right.
So it's like the cute stage. I'm in the cute stage of a breakthrough in my business.
I'm a baby right now. I think that this is what we need to do, instead of focusing on the fear of what we don't know, or what we don't have, or what might happen. I think we just need to look at it a little bit differently, and give ourselves some grace, and give ourselves some room for growth.
Right.
And tell if your kid failed something, you wouldn't be like, oh well, you're done and out, you're gonna be like, well, let's figure out how to throw that ball. Right. Let's figure out how to get that out on first base. You struck out at the plate, let's practice on swinging and hitting that ball. Right. That's what you would treat others like. But when we treat ourselves, we don't hold ourselves to that
we're terrible.
Same
we are terrible to ourselves.
But I think that could be the total game changer in our business, is if we just allowed ourselves some grace and some understanding that we're not going to get it right the first time.
I'm really wondering, because I'm sitting here thinking I could see this being stages. So I felt like, back in childhood, once you kind of got to grade school, and then right before middle school, it was that was the prime, right? And those were the years. You kind of still had that toddler mentality of doing things, but you also had a little more abilities. Mm-hmm. You were more well-rounded. And I think that happens in our business. We get to a certain point of a new thing. We've gotten a breakthrough, right? We're past the toddler stage. We're working. We got this thing, and it's going, it's flowing. I also wonder if when we get to the teen years of that breakthrough, if some people don't become kind of conceited in it, and they become maybe big-headed in it, and they kind of look at it as you know what? Psh, look how great I am. I'm doing wonderful. I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to grow anymore. I've reached that part. Because I remember as a teenager, that's kind of how we were. We were very, self-entitled, kind of looking inwardly at ourselves. And I wonder sometimes when we do things, we can kind of get to that point, and then we find a little bit of regression. Whoa,
yeah, we become comfortable in what we've done and where we've been, and how much we've grown, how many years we've been here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Teen years, we can hit that stage in our business where we get like just cuckoo, right?
Right.
That's what teen years are.
Well, in teen years, I'm kind of looking at this as a point of teens kind of like get to a point where they don't really speak to their parents as much. They don't ask for the help, ask for the advice. They kind of do it on their own. Whereas like in your childhood years, you still have like that mentor. You still have like, you know, someone to bounce ideas off of that you do, you know? Mm-hmm. Don't agree?
No.
Or are you just thinking of something?
No, I disagree.
Oh.
I understand what you're saying, but...
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could probably see this. I mean, if I think about...
You know, I think, though, also, like, as a teen, like, you know, we can get into a place where, like, not so much like we know it all, but we can get into a place where, like, we just kind of hide out, right? Like, we can just kind of... Like, we've already had some success and some things are just, you know, going and, like, with ease.
Okay, you're talking about... So you're saying, like, teen years maybe not really like a rebellion thing. It's more of like we find a way to get comfortable in our own ways because we don't want to go to the next breakthrough of adulthood.
Right, maybe.
Oh, I see that.
Because when you're a teen, right, then
Yeah.
you kind of start realizing, I'm going to have to start paying for insurance.
Right.
I'm going to have to start...
It just comes off as rebellion. But on
well,
the inside...
I mean, maybe for you when you were a teen. I wasn't like that when I was a teen. I was an angel.
No, man, I got the keys. I was out of here. Like, I'm gonna go rip the road.
So for me, I was like, oh, college. I got to do college. Like, oh, I'm going to have to figure out how to pay for insurance. I mean, I need to get a job, I guess. Like, I need to, you know, which creates that. That's when, like, in my life, I started instilling that, like, what I need to do rather than what I wanted to do, which was, like, fear, really, of doing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Rather, you know, I just did what I needed to do, what everyone else was doing. And that, I totally have been there in my business, for sure.
Right.
Like, everybody else is dancing on Reels. Like, I guess I need to dance on Reels, but I was kind of comfortable over here with my Facebook Lives.
And 2 left feet.
Yeah. But really, like, you know, that really isn't for me, and that's okay. Like, but the fear of not doing what everyone else is doing, right?
Yeah.
Or over-educating myself on how to even do a reel or make them transition or, you know, like...
Well, and I think sometimes, too, as an entrepreneur, you don't get into business because you want to do what everyone else is doing. You initially, at a core, I think you get into it because you have this idea, you have this uniqueness, and when we start doing what everyone else is doing, I mean, first off, we all know it's all trending. So whatever comes is probably going to go.
Right.
So at a core value, at a mindset and your heart, those things typically don't change over time. So it's like making sure that you stay unique even though you're doing the trend.
Right. Yeah, because unique is what you need to do.
I think unique is what sells. I think it's what your customers want. Like the only reason, I mean...
I think so. I mean, I think we're all gifted certain things, and we're all gifted something different than you know, our next door neighbor. We're all good at something. We all have different thoughts and beliefs and actions and steps towards it. There can be like a million painters, and their method of going about painting a canvas is so different, but in the end they all produce a canvas, right? Yeah. They all produce like great artwork.
Yes.
But how they got there was so different. Can you imagine if every artist like adopted that idea that they had to paint like Picasso? We would have nothing unique. We would have no like ingenious methods, no new like mediums. We would have all the wall art everywhere you went would essentially look like the same thing, which, you know, I can't imagine what the market would be like if everybody had the exact same product.
I think what makes things unique is heart.
Right.
And I think if people just do what the world says to do, I think that's when you get to like just very mediocre level things, and everything kind of just looks the same, and it is bland. And much like Gordon Ramsay uses a skillet as his canvas, he doesn't just throw salt and pepper and that's it. Anyone can do that. He has different ways of throwing things in, and I think we all have to figure out what is our spice, what's our special sauce.
Right.
When I think of, like, I'm a huge fan of barbecue, and my thing is, you know, like, every barbecue restaurant has like a signature barbecue sauce, whether it's sold at the grocery store or not. But barbecue, they tend to say, look, there's 2 things that set us apart from every other barbecue place. It's our sauce and how we cook the meat, how we smoke, how we slow roast it.
Right.
And so I think that's the core, that's the heart of anyone. And if you always go back to that, maybe that can help erase the fear. Because like a child, the reason why they have no fear is because all they have is their core. And at some point we get to this part of like human life where we begin to fear that people are going to judge us, or that
we're not going to do it right.
Yeah, or even when you do it right, people judge you.
Right.
I mean, that's like a confusing part. Like, you're like, man, this was great, and then all of a sudden you look at a comment and you're like, well, they didn't like it.
Right.
I mean, what a nasty comment.
Right.
And it's kind of like, well, go back to your core. Does their comment apply to your core? No. Move on.
So basically, back to the beginning of when we were talking about, why we over fixate on learning more, knowing more, having the right time, all these things, and to the point where we don't actually get anything done, or we're discouraged when we go do it and it doesn't turn out as great because we didn't come into it with the great energy that we needed. Mm-hmm. Throughout that process of over educating and overweighting, we have lost our uniqueness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So the fear of making sure that we're doing it right to someone else's standards took away our ability to use the uniqueness that we were given, that we were gifted.
No, you're right, because essentially what happens in over-educating us, we've essentially retrained us to think that we need to do A through F in order to make this happen that way.
Which is exactly what someone else did.
Right, which boxes up your uniqueness.
Right.
Which then makes you feel miserable in doing something new, which is going to get you to a point where now you're just going to sabotage it.
Whereas, if we're educating and we're learning and we're, using other people's experience and create and implementing, we're taking action while we're learning. We're not just sitting and waiting for the perfect date that they say is the right time. Then our uniqueness is going to naturally start coming out as we're taking what they're giving.
Right. It's like, if God gives you something, when he gives it to you, he's kind of like,
Noah?
Do it now, right? When he told Noah, he was like, hey, build an ark. Noah wasn't like, well, look, God, I'm pretty sure beaverwood is prime, it's a prime price in January. So if we could wait till then, I'll get a better deal. And then the non-rainy seasons after, and then I can kind of we can dry that wood out, so it's better to build with. So I think that would be a much better plan if we just do that. Doesn't that just make sense?
That's when so and so had the best success, creating their boat.
Right, and God's over here like,
what?
I didn't call you in to do it the way someone else did it.
Right.
I called you in to do it the way that I gave you to do it.
Right. And maybe there's a greater purpose that you don't even know is coming, and that's why you need the boat now.
Yeah.
Maybe that boat that you're supposed to be building, that thing you're supposed to be doing and creating while you're learning, while you're growing, is actually going to save someone else. Is going to make a difference for somebody else that the other boat that was made in prime beaverwood season wasn't meant for.
Right. Which probably sank.
Well, who knows? It probably had a purpose too.
Right. No, I think this is good. So essentially, we need to always think of our core and know our core. I mean, for me, I'm a visual person, so knowing who God made me to be and knowing my core and what He calls me is something I might need to write out. I might need to have it up. And maybe I make it my background screen on my phone, something I see on a multiple occasion, because it's very easy to let the world make you feel like you're mediocre. And I think when you personally feel mediocre, how are you going to produce great things?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so you really have to understand that we all each individually have a purpose. And if you have a business or you're wanting to start a business, your business is essentially you. So you got to put who you were made to be at the core of your business. And the people that you hire into your business need to mesh and meet with that core.
Right. So basically, you need to know your calling, like your purpose, your goal, your direction, where you're going and what you're doing. And then you need to make sure that your mind, right?
Right.
That your thoughts align with
Yep.
that. So when you feel like you're behind, or you need more education, or they said this is the right time but you really feel like you want to do it right now, like know that you can do you, and
Right.
you can do you with no control and no fear of doing it wrong or what somebody else is going
Right.
to say, because that's your calling and that's your purpose, and that's what we're here to do in business.
Right. You mentioned align. It's funny because when you said the word align, it hit my brain. Like, that's the next thing I thought, and you said it. And I think, like, as long as we focus on our alignment,
Right.
like, and, getting the next steps and knowing what we're supposed to do and being reminded of who we are.
And not resisting it.
Right. Which that's difficult.
That's difficult.
Because,
But that resist comes from the fear.
so if we put resist into a tangible thing, I think of like a dam, right? What does the dam resist? It resists the flow of the river, right? The river wants to flow. So it wants to go, it wants to continue, but the dam is something that is a block that resists the flow from occurring, right?
Right.
So being able to open up the gates to allow a flow to occur, sometimes that's where we are. Mm-hmm. Like, we understand our core, we understand who we're called to be, but yet we resist a next step of breakthrough due to fear, due to what others may think, due to feeling like, well, it's probably going to cause more work on me. I'm already having enough trouble balancing things. Not realizing that, you know what, you're not in charge of balancing things. He will take care of that.
Right. And I think also recognizing that it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to, feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think those, are okay. And I think if we realize and recognize that those are okay, those aren't actually something that...
It's normal.
We don't have to turn around and run, right? We
Right.
don't have to say, oh no, there's fear, I'm going the other way.
Right.
We can literally just say, hey, fear, I'm going this way. I'm pretty sure you're probably going to follow along behind me like a puppy dog for a little while, but at some point, you're going to get sidetracked by a bone, and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
So instead of just stopping, or instead of letting fear, make us run or
Right.
discourage us or whatever, we just need to view it as the cute little puppy dog
Right.
chasing along behind us.
So for our listeners, what's the last thing that you think is most important from this?
I think that the most important part of this is to know that it's okay to feel fear, and it doesn't mean you need to run and go the other way, and it doesn't mean that you don't know enough, or that you need to know more, or that you need to have more or be more. I think you just need to say, okay, come on, puppy, we're going anyway, and if you want to tag behind me, then you do, but
Right.
eventually, you're going to just disappear.
Right. Yeah. For me, I want to say resistance is step one of overcoming something to getting to a breakthrough. So when it's there, you need to accept the challenge, educate a little, but take action steps. Look
Right.
for the little wins. Motivate, encourage yourself, and surround yourself with the right group of people that are going to support you in that new venture.
And don't wait for perfection, and don't wait for everything to be great.
No.
Create the success right in the mess, in the chaos.
Right. All right. Well, that is today's episode. We thank you guys for listening.
Well, hey, creative friends, we hope you enjoyed today's episode and you go take action in your business.
If you really enjoyed this episode, we hope that you definitely subscribe to us. And if you know some creative friends out there, go ahead and share to them. For next time, we'll be here, same time, same place.